Good evening, good night, Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Welcome to the second installment of NNP's The People's Conversation. These conversations are meant to help us guide, draft, and design our manifesto that has already been drafted. As I said last week, the other side seems to be wanting to follow us, as we had already coined the People's Manifesto by that name months ago. If they wish to follow, we will lead. Welcome to the panel tonight, our political leader, NNP, Brother Gregory Bowen, long-standing stalwart and MP for St. George's Southeast, Brother Troy Noel, candidate for the town of St. George, and Brother Nimrod Oliver, candidate for St. George's Northeast. This will be our panel tonight. The topic will be housing and infrastructure. There's a lot to talk about in that topic, guys. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but there's a lot happening around the country, and not at a fast pace. I'm going to start off where I left off last week, because I saw certain comments, posts, following our last conversation. We talked about cost of living last week, guys, and the other side thought it prudent to have little subtle responses that didn't really go over well, so I doubt most of you saw them. I saw one minister comment on the Grand Lake matter and try to attribute the rising cost of living that we all are facing to some past mishap. The cost of living didn't happen 10 years ago. The cost of living crisis is happening now, presently. What is being done now to address your concerns as to cost of living? Quite frankly, nothing. They have no answers. All they can do, it seems, is point fingers. Now, the other thing I want to point out too, as we are in the town of St. George, where I actually work, I want to point out that the other side seems to boast that they've done so much in 4 years, that we've transformed this country, that we've developed Grenada. I can't see it. I don't think I could feel it. Actually, I can. I'm feeling it more in my pockets than anything else. I ran into some young people the other day, about 6, 7 years younger than me. And their comment to me was, these guys have shown to do more than the old administration did that they can remember. I was shocked, I was taken aback, I was surprised. Because I went to school in St. George's, so I saw a lot of the development. I went to school in Archibald Avenue at a private school called KD's. It was a little sailor uniform. So anything happening in town, I was directly affected by it. I then went to the Presentation Brothers College. I witnessed the town of St. George's, not only the town of St. George, but Grand Anse, transform and develop. Upon hearing that conversation and it cycling in my mind, I said, you know what, how do I show what has happened to the town of St. George? All right? I reached out to one of our brothers who may have had archives of what the town of St. George looked like in the 90s. He was quick to give me some footage. I screenshotted an image of Melville Street after the storm surge in 1999. And I would want Mikey to put it up on live now so that people on live can see it. Where I frequent, or where the audience that I engage with frequent, is Instagram. I challenged my audience that if they could identify Melville Street, I would give them $25. I think about 60 people responded. Only 20 were able to identify Melville Street. Some people told me that it was Grenville. Some people told me it was Guave. And all I had to tell them was, you're passing in front of there every day. That is the Esplanade Mall, and that's Republic Bank you're watching. Our youth, especially, it seems, I don't know if some of us my age and younger have amnesia, but they seem to have forgotten that the only party that has been able to transform, to develop Grenada, has always and only been the New National Party. Esplanade didn't happen overnight, but we got it done. We got it done in a term. Port Louis, we got it done. We got the investors to come in. I often have this memory stuck in my brain that when I used to come down by Belmont, there was this guy selling turtle backs, shiny turtle backs. I used to always ask myself, well, who buying these turtle backs that forever and a day, they just in a showroom on the side of the fence? And many of us can remember that. Those are the images that are forever stuck in my brain. I remember when from Wall Street, go all the way back to where the police station is right now, was Brer Picker. The mall didn't exist. KFC didn't exist. It was just Pricker from Wall Street, go all the way back. And why do I remember that? Because I used to go to BBC Beach a lot. All right? Tonight's topic is housing and infrastructure. And I want to stick on infrastructure because I have been a benefactor of some infrastructure in my own constituency. I hail from the community of Monjulu, and somewhere between the early 2000s, I think right after Ivan, Mr. Bowen embarked on a major road project that stemmed from the bottom of Richmond Hill all the way to the cliff. Now, I want you guys to guess how long that project took. That project took probably 14, 15 months tops. I'm talking from Richmond Hill to the cliff. Fast forward to today. The cliff project, which started 3 years ago, has yet to be completed. I speak for many road users, including myself, when I say passing through Woburn was a nightmare. What took me 5 minutes to get home took me 30 minutes. Now, I want to be candid, and I'm trying to be short as possible. There's so much things, and I want the candidates to address them in your question and answer as possible. But I'm trying to lay the bigger picture here. This is a complete and utter failure of mismanagement, wastage of funds, and people who seem to not know or appreciate what they're doing and how it affects you and me. It cannot continue, and it will not continue once we do what we need to do. I am very concerned as a young professional and a young person in this country when I look around and see what's happening. This bill designs contracts, and I want you to understand from a guy who's just 35 and how I feel about it. While they may hail it that these are great contracts, I want you to ask yourself, and you're going to ask the ministers, have you seen any of the terms and conditions for these contracts? Has the government announced what is the cap value of any of these contracts? Will they announce it? Based on their pattern or their trend of how they handle business so far, more than likely you will hear crickets because there will be absolute silence and there will be no accountability and no transparency. I have said enough. I hope I've gotten your minds energized and ready to be engaged. Let me welcome to the podium the candidate for the Tongue of St. George, the guy with the big ideas, the guy that knows the numbers, the guy that's ready to serve you, respect you, and walk alongside you. Let us give it up for Brother Troy Noel.
Good night, folks. I said good night, folks. It is a pleasure to be here again. It is always a pleasure to serve. And when it comes to letting people know what my ideas are, I take it with all pleasure. Good night to our political leader, Honorable Emmeline Pear, Mr. Gregory Boren, former MP of St. George Southeast, Mr. Nimrod Oliver, candidate for St. George Northeast, executive members, Northeastman, executive members of the New National Party, constituents, and residents of Tongue of St. George, visitors all, good night. Since the NDC took office in 2022, the people of the Tongue of St. George have heard many promises about housing and infrastructure, but the results have fallen far short from expectation. We were promised 500 Grenadian-style houses every year, a commitment that should have brought about thousands of houses in Grenada after 4 years. As a matter of fact, we should have about 2,000, yeah? Up to this point, we have not seen any one of them, at least not in the Tongue of St. George. Am I right? These houses were supposed to be affordable, and they're supposed to give opportunities to young contractors. Low-income families supposed to be housed. Skilled workers was offered employment. However, though, these houses should have benefited the Tongue of St. George, but as we both know, it never came to pass. Instead, what happened? Many families continue to wait for affordable housing. Young people continue to wait for jobs. And home ownership has become increasingly out of reach. And some families, at least those that was affected by Hurricane Beryl, are still seeking permanent housing solutions. The NDC have demonstrated that announcements and slogans and ambitious promises cannot replace proper planning, sound financing, effective implementation, and last of all, accountability. We deserve a government that will move housing projects from mere promises to a transparent completion. We deserve an NNP administration that ensures that assistance reach the families who genuinely need them. Contractors and small businesses around this Tongue of St. George have raised concerns about delayed payments, placing pressure on the workers, the suppliers, and the wider economy. Infrastructural development cares less about concrete and asphalt and more about safer communities, economic opportunities, reliable public services, and improving the quality of life for every Grenadian, Caricunian, and Petit Martinican. We were promised so much, but what have we gotten? This is a list of what we have gotten. Potholes on the Maras Hill that doesn't seem to be fixed. Blocked drains and overhanging on the lane that seems unseen. Disaster in Woolwich Road, the Caranage, H.A. Blaze Street, which is evidence of the neglect of the NDC. Broken sidewalks on the Caranage, and you would realize if you go through the Caranage right now, there is a set of areas where they block out. But you know, these people just block out place and just don't do nothing. Yeah? Can't see it, but you never know. We will also have to grapple with non-provision of adequate housing assistance for the constituents, mediocre repairs, improper drainage, and of course, no care by the government. Inadequate community spaces for fruitful engagement by the constituents. Existence of no MP, or should I say the non-existence of the MP and the government officials. Job creation, youth employment is crippling our economy, and of course, the tongue of St. George. Additionally, there's an fear of an active rainy season in tongue of St. George at this point in time. A few days of rain pass, and people start to wonder what is going to happen with the river. Yeah? We have a case where our recreation facilities are not being taken care of. As a matter of fact, in a few weeks in the carnival, what do you think will happen to the river road, the playing field? Can anybody tell me what is going to happen there? It would be mashed up because they use that playing field as parking for any event in this stadium. We also grapple with the Wembley Park that used to be used for small cricket games and picnicking and so on. Now it's a concrete site, a construction site, yeah? And it was promised that after the project, the River Road project, it would be redone for families to partake of. Up to now, that has not been done because you know that the River Road project was stopped. Yeah? The River Road Pan, we said still looking for a home because they were supposed to be built a home after that park was refurbished. But as you know, they're still searching for a home that to call their home. And persons are still without electricity, still without water. And it was amazing to me when I see how much persons in the community that was still without electricity and water. I was like, wow. In this day and age, how can we have a constituency, persons in town that don't have electricity and don't have water? That's something that should have not even crossed my mind. But that is the case. It is clear that the administration now does not seem to care, and we need something better. It is clear that the NNP, with everything that was said before, placed serving residents of this constituency at the top of the agenda and will continue to do so. We have to understand this. The tongue of St. George is home to the capital city, and we as its residents are the custodian of it. That is why I can proudly stand here and say that infrastructure development has been and will continue to be a major focus under the NNP administration. An NNP government will restore effective project management, prioritize climate resilient housing and infrastructure, support local contractors as they have always done, improve accountability, and ensure value for taxpayers' resources. Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique cannot afford another term of promises without delivery. It is time to restore competent governance, rebuild public confidence, and get Grenada back to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Troy. Excellent updates on the community, very on point. As a carnival man myself, I'm actually wondering what is going to happen on Carnival Monday and Tuesday. I'm seeing them working fiercely now to try and work a miracle. I hope they work the miracle because Carnival is actually our biggest festival. Outside of the tourist season, it is one of our biggest revenue generators. I often tell the MPs or the persons responsible for tourism and Spice Mass that Grenada is in competition with the other islands when it comes to Carnival. St. Vincent just wrapped up theirs, and all I'm hearing is stellar reviews on how great their Carnival is and how many people are going to go there next year. St. Lucia is next, thereafter Barbados, and finally, the best mass by far. But the best mass by far cannot happen, or will not be the best mass by far, if we are not able to accommodate the best mass by far. These roads are critical. Today I saw that we had to pass through the top road of the Carnage, H.A. Blaze Street, because they blocked off the downturn by the police station, because I believe they were doing work. How long is that going to last for? Who knows? The Cliff Road took 3 years. Hopefully this doesn't take 5. Right? Last episode, I received some feedback. They said, Dylan, gosh man, if you want people to come to this thing, it can't be seen everybody wearing green. Get some people to wear neutral colors. So I said, you know what? I spoke to the political leader. I said, let's try and wear neutral colors and let some people wear green still. She came in brown, I came in black. But I want you to pay attention. The house is still over my heart. And that is where the love is, in the house. Our next speaker is Mr. Bowen. And before he steps up, I want to say something as a member of St. George's North, South, East. And I want to say that Mr. Bowen has been a diamond class example of what an MP is, of what a politician is. And I want to tell you why. Many a times, either when I'm driving, while I was going to school, I would see Mr. Bowen, taking the bus, as a matter of fact, I would see Mr. Bowen walking around the constituency. And not just my part of the constituency, I'm talking about the entire thing. There are days when I'm somehow wandering in St. Paul's, who do I see walking? Mr. Bowen. He's engaging, he's talking, he's listening. Mr. Bowen could tell you your whole entire family tree. He could tell you which part you're from, which corner of the road you're from, if you stay down by the ravine, where the boundaries end on your property. He knows all of that. He knows his constituencies. He knows the problems. He knows the families. That didn't happen overnight. That took dedication, determination, and a need and want to serve the people of St. George's Southeast. So without further ado, help us welcome Brother Bowen to the platform to address us briefly on housing and infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, Mr. Chairman, for your kind words. Let me recognize the political leader, the candidate from the town of St. George, and the candidate from St. George Northeast. And you beautiful people here. I always say that the thrust and the strive that I have to participate and to serve come from you. Being with you, seeing you, recognizing your problems and recognizing your hardships. And I've known a lot of stalwarts of the new National Party and of Grenada, because ultimately The mechanism might be through the National Party, but the ultimate goal is to serve the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and the Petit Martinique. Tonight, I asked to speak on infrastructure. And speaking to the political leader, she said from time memorial, I know that you have been in this area. You have moved. I was in agriculture, I was in finance, but most of my time is spent in infrastructure. So let us talk about what is the infrastructure of a country and how it should be properly managed so that the country benefits. A country infrastructure is made up of the public sector infrastructure, and that's what we know it as, roads and buildings in particular. If you add water, electricity, and telecommunication, this in a nutshell is what you may refer to as the state infrastructure, although some of it may be owned privately or through a statutory body. But at one point in time, all of these things were under the central government. Brothers and sisters, you do have the private sector infrastructure. Your homes, the domestic, the commercial buildings, and the industrial or manufacturing buildings and other parts, because the machinery and everything inside those things, they are all part of the country's infrastructure. And when you take the responsibility of infrastructure, you have to ensure that all flourishes. The private sector, because you're managing in a certain pattern and you're planning in a certain way so that the private sector improves, develops. And all the state infrastructure is there to serve the private sector and the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. So the roads, the water, electricity, telecommunication, buildings, state may not be owned, but they operate in a manner to serve you, to serve your homes, yes, and to serve all the others. So let us look at the state infrastructure. Roads, those owned by central government. Buildings owned by central government. The water system owned by a parastatal body. The electricity system previously owned by a private entity, now owned by the state as a private company. And you have water and telecommunications. I have been doing some research on our business because one of the fundamental things when we came in 2013 and worked with the IMF was that you had to reduce the public sector. But if you're going to reduce the public sector, they must go somewhere. They must go into the private sector. So we must work with the private sector to build the capacity so that they can take the people coming in. Gone are the days when you say, I'm the politician, I'm the minister, I'm going to send 30 people into the ministry and 200 people there. And at the end of the day, you're sinking and sinking. But you have to plan and have the capacity to manage to do those things. So let us look at the electricity. Way back in the early 2090s, Grenada did what I found out, and you could have researched it. You could go to the international institution. Right now, when they go and they ask people in the reduction of poverty drive, what is crippling you the most? Grenada went through the rural electrification program. The infrastructure there, poles and lines, etc., as you bring electricity to the homes of the people. But coming out of this, And we never calculated it. But pretty soon, it will be calculated, and you will know exactly the magnitude of what has been done under the rural electrification program. What you call micro and small businesses, formal and informal. Informal is where you don't register, it's just you and your brother and your mother and your sister go in and you start a business and you employ yourself and you employ one or two of the neighbors. Ladies and gentlemen, after the rural electrification program, you know all appliances sold out in Grenada. Small businesses catalyzed, they mushroomed. And we never looked to see, although we felt it, the number of homes who were not working before, but they were now earning an income. And as you look and see what is happening in the big world, in the international institutions, as we try to reduce poverty, when they go to homes, India, Latin America, the Caribbean, wherever you're at, and they ask, what is one of your main problems? They had two main problems. The first one was finding cash. The second one was a lack of electricity. So they could not help themselves to come out of the eating the bread line. This is what we did so many years ago. The water situation where we increased the infrastructure, the lines and so forth, all of that helped too. And it did not help only the small businesses. We expanded water from the areas, the source, into the grandans. There were days when hotels had no water. Remember that? People had to come to Grenada and we left with a bad name. But under the new National Party, we corrected this. We corrected this. The hotel boom. So we must remember that water and all these things, they're a big part of the country's infrastructure. Brothers and sisters, telecommunication. When we liberalized the sector, other people could have come in. The prices dropped. Whenever you have competition, price will drop. Services improved. And the NTRC, the National Telecommunication Regulatory Commission, that's the regulatory body. They were never there before, but now they're in place to listen to consumers' complaints, to ensure that when you have your line as flow and digital, you cannot say you cannot use it. These were the laws in place to ensure that you did not waste, and investment was not overdone, and that everybody benefited. There is no commercial sector in the world today that could benefit without the telecommunication system, the internet, and all that it brings to us. Under the new National Party, we move forward with this. Electricity, when we liberalized, you know, we were supposed to reach 20% since 2020, 20% of renewable energy. But we could not do that because the private entity at that time signed in 1994 with the NDC. They signed, okay, that if you do certain things, then you'll have to buy back the company. That's called a repurchase clause. And you had to buy it back at a criminal price. So that was a big blow on the nation, irrespective of which government you were. And I have heard it said that we are looking now at a 15 megawatt plant in renewable energy here and there. The new National Party initiated all these things. We had 15 megawatts of geothermal, and we had 2 plants at 15 megawatts each, speaking with IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, to get on board. But these things couldn't come true. Once the masters in position say, we don't like that, you cannot do it. That is why the new National Party said, we must move to pass a law. We are a sovereign country, and we will pass the law. I heard them say that we bought back Gren Lake. We had to, you know. We did not go to the owners and say, we want to buy it back. We passed the law. And we said, people can put solar panels on their home. They did not want that. They will identify two persons and say, okay, you could put panels at your home. You can sell the excess to me, but I will buy it only at 15 cents. But the Public Utility Regulatory Commission was given the task of saying at what price the consumer will pay and at what price the company will buy from those with panels on their home. They did not like that. When we opened up and say anybody could approach the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission and say, I want to set up a plant and Grenlec must buy from me, the Public Utilities Commission will say, how much will you sell it to them for? And if they can produce it cheaper, well, that's you. They can produce it cheaper, the customer will benefit. But if they can sell to you so that you can sell to the customers cheaper, then you must allow them to go forward. And that is how they did not say anything. They went to the courts, to the arbitration, and say, government, you must buy it back. But because of what was signed many years ago, we had no choice. So either we operated in slavery, and I heard Prime Minister Mia Motley responding to a question that had the same sentiments along the line. Either we lived in slavery or we freed ourselves. All these things we did because we know that we must increase and we must get monies to do all our projects. So in 2013, when we came back, we worked with the IMF to say that we will put things in place. We will do what is right. And we spoke with very high-level officials in the US who were appalled at what we signed in 1994. But it is their citizens, it is their companies, so we don't expect them to go and beat them over the head. You know what they told us? You do what you have to do. And we did what we have to do. So right now, the 15 megawatts that they're talking about could have never come on stream. I could have never even been contemplated and discussed if that group were in place. The 15 megawatts of geothermal that we commenced working on could never have been discussed. Japan and others are helping us. Could never have been discussed, much less to be contemplated. And remember, we have a commitment, we have a goal to reach 20% of renewable energies by the year 2030. We missed the first one. So we are moving straight ahead into the second one. That is why the composition of the infrastructure of electricity will no longer be diesel engines. It will be solar panel, it will be geothermal, and we'll all be producing electricity at a much cheaper rate. Then we look at roads. Let us come to roads. That is the central government part of it. Brothers and sisters, the chairman and the candidate for chairman of the meeting and the candidate for spoke about the many roads that we did. Remember the farm roads? We had 4 phases. The first 2 phases that we ensured that, remember, infrastructure must serve a sector. It is not there to serve itself. So we served the farmers under the Farm Road Project. We did over 33 roads under the first 3 projects. And then the NDC came into office and they made CCC go. And I watched the hundreds of workers ended up without a job. And they came to me and say, Chief, I know I did wrong. I voted out my work. I say, well, you have to suffer. You have to pay for it, and you have to correct it. And indeed, they corrected it, right, in 2013. By then, we moved to the IMF and the World Bank because you were selling buildings to pay salaries. A country cannot continue like that. And we worked with them to put systems in place that we will ensure that we had no wastage, that we had a financial buffer. That is why you had 500 million, $500 million in the treasury when we left office. It is gone to zero now. But if you do not have a buffer, Any natural disaster, you're gone. You can't come back. And the international community will not help you because you met things there and you destroyed it. And one of the things we put in place, too, is to prevent. We were not a corrupt regime, but we put things in place to prevent corruption. That is why we had the Procurement Act, which limited sole sourcing. That is a minister calling a person, or the permanent secretary calling a person and say, you take a job. There are quick and urgent jobs, but you could only do this for a job costing $15,000 and less. Anything above that, you had to tender. And we use that to teach our young contractors how to tender. So if you had a $25,000 job, you get 3 of them and say, go and give me the cost. And the tenders board will look at it and award one of them. And believe you me, we had training, they learned a lot, and they did well. But what has this regime done? They moved it and shifted it into 100,000. Yes? So that you could call somebody and say, take that. And what happens after the 100,000? Let me tell you, in my meetings with the IMF at a point in time, they indicated that these things will prevent corruption. So I say, who do you know about that? It was a Latin American gentleman, consultant for the World Bank. And he said, this is rampant in Africa. I say, but Grenada is not Africa. He said, I know how you feel, but you will learn. I'm encouraging you to put a clause in the law to penalize any minister or any official who break the law. I told him that the parliament has certain powers. They could call and sanction any one of the members. But when you have a parliament who will not see right from wrong, that did not work. And this is one thing I could tell you. If that IMF man comes back to me again, the first thing you will see on the law book, as I will tell the people, is sanction against any official, whether elected or not, for breaking the rules and for infiltrating and instilling corruption. This was a fundamental reason why we did the Procurement Act. So on the roads like the Cliff to Red Gate, Wygon to the Cliff, as was mentioned before, the Eastern Main Road, the St. Patrick's Road, Roads and Bridges Project, island-wide and countrywide, because we include Carriacou and Petit Martinique, the storm surge rehabilitation. Remember the CD fences? All of those things were done. Maintenance, the Grand Detang Road, that's, remember, there are a lot of rockfall going over the Grand Detang Road, remember this? We fixed that with the help of the Japanese. And we did the bridge in Butch Grove. When people said, when we started the bridge, they said, well, how this thing so high, how thing will go over? When they looked at it at the end, they said, marvelous. But you must have capacity and understand the business, otherwise get out of it. If you want to manage a ministry, you must know how to talk to the officers under you. Most people may not be able to do that. So they get an advisor. We have to agree and accept that. So you either get the competent persons to help you to do what you have to do, or you yourself, in any event, you could get an advisor, but the responsibility is still yours. So the Florida Bridge, the St. John's River, remember all those things? The Guelph Road and Guelph Bridge, that was another one. When we were building the bridge in Guelph, they say, oh, where is this mountain going? When they saw how it came out, they said, oh, marvelous. And there has never been a flooding problem in that area since, brothers and sisters. So then, let us move. You will have your questions if you have any special project. Let us move to buildings. So the buildings, brothers and sisters, how did we go? We had the bus terminus, just remind a few, the General Hospital extension, the schools, GEEP 1 and GEEP 2, for our minister could tell you about, the Educational Enhancement Project, the ministerial complex. It's a fundamental issue where we brought everybody together so that efficiency could be achieved. the airport and seaport expansion, the markets, Grenville and St. George in particular. You also had Sotes, lighting of the playing fields, community centers. The one in Marion, right here, close to home. Those close to the areas, we have the health centers, and we had the Chinese housing project, as was mentioned before. So all of these things are together. But we have to find monies to do every project, And every time under the new National Party, we had projects, we had monies, we had grants, and we had loans, because we followed the international institutions' recommendation that we ourselves participated in. So, in a nutshell, I just give you a roundup on what infrastructure of a country is, what it means, and how it must work to help the citizens, to help the private sectors, and to help the country develop. And at the same time, we must be able to get and to bring in finances. And we must stop any and all corruption. Thank you very much.
Give it up again for Brother Bowen, please. I keep hearing a lot about, why I keep talking about the past. Without knowing where we come from, we would have no idea where we're going. Without the experience, we will be novices in everything we do. This is why the new National Party team is blended with experience and with youth. Together is how we will chart the way forward and effect transformation and development like we have never seen before. Brother Boyle mentioned a couple things. He touched and concerned the IMF and the World Bank. When I talk to some of my friends and some of my colleagues, I tell them in the first couple days of these people being in office, the leader went on a national interview with Callistra. And what did he say about the IMF and the World Bank? All right, I want you to go do that research. I want you listeners, go pull it. I believe like my generation loves to clip and research. It is there on live. I believe it may still be on GIS, but if not, I believe it's on Callistra's page. During the previous election, the entire team of the other side ridiculed the reliance on the IMF and said that the IMF was wrong and they didn't know what they were talking about. The reality on the ground is completely different. The hypocrisy is this. Those same people today are relying and quoting the IMF. To justify the debt management report or debt report that was released 2 weeks or a week ago. The same IMF that they said we shouldn't listen to, we shouldn't read, they have no understanding of Grenada, they are now treating it as their Bible. You ask them to explain probably page 7 of the report, they probably don't know page 7 because why? They're not reading it. Someone is generating that summarized version for them so they can't thoroughly explain to you what exactly is happening, but they are constantly relying on it. And I challenge them to come on live and explain to the people properly what is the actual reality of Grenada's finances. Brother Boyle mentioned the storm sewers again, as I mentioned earlier, and the sea defense walls. That entire West Coast, I'm talking about from Queen's Park to Grand Mall, from Guave or from Palmis to Guave, from Victoria, go on, was redone. Did it take us 3 years? Absolutely not. That is an entire western corridor that was fixed and repaired. And I want us to understand something, especially my generation, and on anybody else. When you go around the Caribbean, especially the OECS, Grenada is one of the few islands that has a ring road. You could start in St. George's, you could go on the west, you could go all the way up to the north, come down on the east, and end back in St. George's, all along the coast. St. Vincent, you can't do that. Dominica, you can't do that. Montserrat, you can't do that. St. Lucia, you can't do that. The only other island that I am aware of is St. Kitts. Everybody else has to go in the middle and shoot off. That infrastructure development and planning only happened under who? The new National Party. This happened with a team, guys. It didn't happen with one person. This was several technocrats, several professionals that formed the new National Party, together with further support, and championed all our development and all our transformation. When you compare team to team, the other side comes nowhere close. They pale in comparison. But we always have a leader. Our side has a humble, energetic, courageous, and experienced leader. Help me welcome our political leader, Emmeline Pear.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you to our Gen Sec. I know you're anxious to talk. And I'm going to ensure that you can talk sooner rather than later. So let me recognize the distinguished head table. I want to recognize first our stalwart, former Member of Parliament, Brother Gregory Bowen. Put your hands together for him. And to say that the new National Party is blessed to have experienced persons with decades of institutional knowledge and experience that we can benefit from, and we stand better for it. I also want to recognize tonight Brother Nimrod from St. George, Northeast. Put your hands together for him. Brother Nimrod is working so very hard, and I want to commend him and his team and all of those who are working out there with him in the field. And I believe St. George Northeast will be back in the house of the new National Party. And of course, we are in the tongue of St. George. Put your hands together for Brother Troy and the team that is working with him to ensure that NNP continues to lead in the tongue of St. George. Better for the tongue of St. George. So I believe, brothers and sisters, the team of the new National Party, what I refer to a perfect blend of experience and knowledge, freshness, passion, new ideas, innovative ideas, and ways of governance. Grenada will be better because of Team NNP. But tonight I also bring you greetings from our family and friends in New York. Put your hands together for them. Brothers and sisters, over the last weekend, I was touched by the level of support for the NNP out there in the diaspora. The love and the passion, but mostly the concern for the direction that Grenada is going. But I said to them, rest assured, NNP stands ready to lead this country into better. Tonight, brothers and sisters, I want to take 5 minutes and to quickly, very, very quickly, to share a few points on housing. Tonight we are looking at infrastructure, housing, But of course, when you get an opportunity, do not limit yourself. That's our limit at the head table, infrastructure and housing. Brothers and sisters, many people, and it's important to put context to this. It's not yapping, it's context. Many people voted in the current government because of the promise of 500 houses per year. Right? Many people. I am sure that there are people in the tongue of St. George who voted for the 500 houses per year. Do you know what it's like to not own a house? You do not have a home, you're taking a night rest somewhere, and a political party tells you that it is going to build 500 per year. Well, you already conclude one of that must be for you. So it means that by now, we should have been on about 2,000 by now. Give them a little wiggling room. Let's even say 1,500, 1,700. Brothers and sisters, that project has only delivered 17 houses out of 2,000. But you don't hear them talk about that. It is important to highlight this because the conversation must be about competence and ability to deliver. So when you look back under the NNP, we counted over 8,000 people who benefited from our housing program. And that did not include persons who received assistance after Hurricane Ivan. And remember, we did not get a CRIF payout 14 days after the hurricane. But we have a record of over 2,000 families that would have benefited in the case of housing after Hurricane Ivan. The record is there. The competence can be seen and felt throughout the length and breadth of Grenada. So when we speak, and in our last manifesto, we spoke about 2,000 houses. But these were not numbers we just threw out. These were not numbers that we just felt like speaking about. It is because we delivered before. So we knew that we were capable of delivering 2,000 houses within the term. So we were not going to experiment. The team did it before. And so, brothers and sisters, I say to you, when we promised in the last election that we were going to put a significant sum of monies in the Grenada Development Bank for first-time home owners, we knew what we were about. And the specific thing I want to mention here is that we said it on the platform that a special program was going to be for young people 35 years and under. We said it. But of course, you know, sometimes people like to jump for new things. So I guess what we said at the time, people were not even listening, right? But I'm saying to you tonight, I believe that people have observed sufficiently. They've learned sufficiently from this exercise and that they are ready for change. So when we say that we are going to do 2,000 units, it is not something in the sky. Brothers and sisters, look back. The Chinese low-income housing. Brother Nimrod deceased and our former political leader and former prime minister, Dr. Mitchell, journeyed to China to ensure that we had the funding in place to construct these units. Brothers and sisters, before we left office, we started the distribution. Some people had keys in their hands. These units, brothers and sisters, were designed for low and no income owners. What did the NDC do? the party that is supposed to have a heart. They took these said units and decided to commercialize it, making it impossible for low and medium income persons to be able to access. And this is so sad because there are people who were depending on these units, single mothers who have nowhere to sleep at nights with their children, taking a night rest. They were counting on the government for the relief. But do you know, brothers and sisters, and I'll give St. Mark as an example, which to me describes the heartlessness of this administration. So in St. Mark, where you had 130 units, and look at what we did right around Grenada, providing low-income units to families. 130 units completed, ready to be handed over. Earlier this year, when we checked, there were only 4 people. After 4 years, 4 people living in a facility that could accommodate 130 families. That is a crime, in my opinion. But you know what is a bigger crime, in my opinion? Is that some of these units are locked up. Not because we don't have families to benefit, not because we don't have families in need, but they have commercialized it to the extent that we are reliably informed, and the facts are there, that some people have bought these units as a second home. Some people have bought these units with an intention to rent them out. God have mercy. Could you imagine a single mother sleeping on the floor in someone's living room with her children, threatened to be thrown out in the rain, was listed and approved for one of these apartments, and 4 years after, she has to look at these apartments locked up because the owners do not need them. It is so sad. But I want to say to you tonight, better days are coming. So the NNP, when we return into office, and I said to you before, we are giving you a general idea of our plans. Nobody will force us to release our plans prematurely. We are giving you a general idea. When our manifesto is launched, you will get the details. No one controls us in that regard. So I'm saying to you tonight, we will launch a rent-to-own program. We will launch a rent-to-own program so that families, the little that they have, could go towards rental, that they know one day they will own the property. We are going to ensure, and we said it last election, that the Grenada Development Bank would have resources to support people who want to build a home, don't have the collateral that the bank require. The government would take a risk, will take a chance on them to ensure that they have roof above their head. If we could take a risk with a minister and give a minister $2 million, why can't we do that for an ordinary person to ensure that they have a roof over their head? Brothers and sisters, we are going to ensure that the support we give is going towards more resilient construction. That every 6 months, you don't have to come back to an MP. That when we build, we will build. And that is why we are looking at some models as we have never had before, and looking at all the options to ensure that we build more resilient units so that our people will be better off. That is our new national party's intention. Better for everybody. The final thing I'll say before I leave. I heard one member of the government say this, that when you look around, you can see the Build Back Better units. You can identify them from afar. Well, that may be so. But let's just remind ourselves that had it not been for the CRIF insurance policy that the NNP took out, this administration would not have had the resources to even think of starting to build the units. That's one. The second thing, we love to preserve people's dignity. So when this administration is busy showing everybody the bathroom and toilet that they build for person, that's not NNP way. We don't feel that we have to expose you in that way. We are not in a PR program. We are in service to people, protecting their dignity. So we don't need no credit pointing out every house. Can you point out the houses that we build? Over 2,000 after Hurricane Ivan. Can you point them out? There's a reason, because we're not into PR stunts. We protect people's dignity, that many people have a house today and no one even know that they got it from the government of Grenada. Brothers and sisters, NNP is ready for a new round of housing program that would serve the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit-Martinique. God bless you.
Get up again for the political leader, Emmeline Pear. Political leader, I just want to say, I think I could one-up you on the heartlessness of this government. You mentioned the Chinese homes, and you also mentioned Hurricane Beryl. Imagine the destruction and havoc in Carriacou and Petit-Martinique. All of us remember Ivan, right? And how Grenada looked after Ivan. Picture that in Carriacou. And these people were so heartless that they refused and did not allow the people of Carriacou and Petit-Martinique to stay in those empty houses while they sought to get them relief. Heartless. That would have never happened under the new National Party. Brothers and sisters, without further ado, you've heard enough from us. You've heard enough from us from tonight and previous nights. This time is your time to talk, to query, to question, to suggest, to engage this panel, to add your voice to the design of the future of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit-Martinique. Before I hand the mic over to you, I just want to remind us of the rules. Be respectful, listen carefully and actively, share briefly, and keep your comments, suggestions, queries constructive. Ladies and gentlemen, the floor is yours. By a show of hands, we will be passing the mics around, but I believe this gentleman was the first who wanted to speak.
Yeah, good night, everybody. Mr. Bowen, wonderful word song. I enjoy it, Make the people know what's going on, I might never know that, but I know it tonight. So give thanks. Yes. Yes, and next thing on the agenda. Yeah, Miss Pierre, hats up to you, and looking forward in the coming election, Jah will be with you. And the next thing I have to say, I hope when you come in power, we come in power, that you could change the rules the man and them set. Like trying to explain how they set the rules. Dr. Kit Mitchell, the elder, set a plan that you live on a piece of land X amount of years, the land become yours. I get a news from the brethren the other day. He tell me, you know, the man and them change villa. I say, whoa, with them ballad, what listen? And so I say again, I come from the country. My roots is from Mardi Gras. Yeah, my roots is from Mardi Gras. And when I come from the country, I didn't have nowhere to stay. I still get a little piece of spot by my grandmother. And I build a little house, you know. So I appreciate that much. But the next thing, I say I want to set a rules that just how I get it from my grandmother, I could get a piece of land so I could leave it for my grandchildren and them. Because I know he had to own a piece of land, you know. And the love my grandmother showed me by giving me that little house spot. I grew my children there. I had 3 kids, big children, not kids again. I had 3 children, 1 girl and 2 boys, and I have grand already. So I would love when the government come in power, they could, you know, turn the thing around and let poor people survive, you know, because right now I work in the land and I don't pay no tax. So if I own the land, I could pay tax. My children might build a little house, they go pay tax, and the government, the country build in, you know. So hats up to the government.
Take a few questions. And guys, please use the mic. We're recording all of this so we can document it and use it going forward.
Good night to everyone. I'm from St. George Northwest. My question is about housing. And this is very critical, but everybody needs a home. And when we look at the situation, we're going under this government. They have no plan to build no proper home for the people of Greater Caribbean Diplomatic. So my question to the panel, what are the plan of NNP when the election call and they will be victorious for building affordable home for the people of Greater Caribbean Diplomatic?
One more question before we revert to the panel.
Yeah, good night. Yeah, my question is, when the NNP takes office, what will be the plan towards development in terms of tourism, agriculture, small businesses and growth? So what will be your plan towards that?
Okay, so let me just start with the concerns surrounding lands and land use and land ownership. And to say that when the New National Party was in office, one of the things that we gave priority to as it relates to land ownership is that those persons who are considered marginalized, those persons who considered low income, those persons were not disenfranchised, they were not denied ownership because of their status, that they had an opportunity that they could own land once the circumstances and the conditions fitted within the existing laws. And so we modified and we upgraded laws, we made changes to ensure that that could happen. And that is why many people today, under the New National Party, based on the number of years that they would have lived on a property, would have been able to actually get title to that. And we believe that land ownership, housing, these must continue to be priority for people. Remember what I said before, preserving our dignity, preserving your dignity. Food, clothing, shelter. What are those? Basic needs of man. And so shelter, look at our symbol, the house, right? And you would understand why we would continue to give priority as it relates to land ownership and housing, right? Quickly, I'm going to move to the second question. Now, I mentioned before that one of the major projects that we are looking into right now, that when we launch our manifesto, you should look out for the details of this and how it's going to be done, is our rent-to-own project, right? We believe that too many people do not have a roof over their heads because they just cannot afford to make a start, right? And so we want to be able to support more. And as I said before, this is not dropping from the sky. Go back to our last manifesto, and you're going to realize within there, we would have made serious allocation for support for first-time home owners and people who did not own a house at the time. Continued support for persons as it relates to materials. And the point I want to make as it relates to land is that we also have to be mindful that lands are very limited. And so we have to look at models that would be able to give us large numbers within large, smaller spaces, right? But the key thing that we want to note is that we want to be able to put roofs over the heads of people who don't have as far as is possible. So the details of that you're going to get when we launch our manifesto. Rent to own would be a major focus area. Housing support. In the past, we have given a lot of families would have benefited from housing support. So $30,000 worth of material, for example, $50,000, 3% interest rate. We have done it in the past, but the key thing is we ought not to just go there with the intention to continue exactly what we're doing without carefully analyzing what were the shortcomings, what were the weaknesses, what are the areas that we can improve. And I'll just mention one of those areas that obviously would be one for reconsideration, the way that we did it. Too many persons got housing assistance and were not able to use the material immediately. So we cannot just look at supporting you. We have to look at more ways in which we can facilitate support to actually construct. So all of these initiatives, that is why I say to you, get ready for a manifesto. It would be those things that you have shared that were challenges, those things you suggested when we engage with you that should improve. And then the final question, which is a big one, agriculture, tourism, and what was the third area? Small business. Now, when we think about agriculture, two things I want us to think about, and that is where our manifesto conversation is. Agriculture must be expanded in terms of the support that we're going to give to farmers for two key reasons. Food security. You know, right now we're spending over $500 million per year importing food. So food security and food nutrition. We have to feed our people in a way that we are healthier, and we have to secure ourselves. Look at what is happening. One little thing happened up the road, and certain food we can't buy locally. So our support is going to be very structured, very targeted when it comes to agriculture, because we have to cut that food import bill. We have to ensure that more of our children can be bread and sausage for lunch in school, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We have to ensure that we are thinking more about nutrition and food security, right? As it relates to tourism, there are a number of areas. In other words, we did an excellent job before, but that does not mean that we didn't leave areas for further improvement, and we are zeroing in. So when we speak about tourism, it's good that we can serve our tourists. It's good we can make them happy, but if workers cannot get home after they finish, make our visitors happy, then there's a problem. So when you talk about tourism, how do we increase revenue there? How do we expand the room stock? Look back. If we talk in hotels, credit to NNP. This administration has spent 4 years. Any new major project? What have we done in these 4 years? So of course, one of the priorities will be to continue to increase the room stock, ensure that our local workers are better taken care of. So transportation, there are some other things there in terms of workers that we won't speak to at this time, that we're fleshing out, but definitely improving our product. And improving our product has to be decentralized. People come and they want an experience that take them beyond St. George's. So how do we support people in rural communities to offer a product that people would want to come back? In our last administration, we provided incentives for investors to invest outside of St. George's as well. So we would have given additional support, because we want to make sure that when visitors come, they have a full experience. St. George's, but they also go to the other parishes, and of course, national development enhanced as a result. So we want to make sure all of those facets, all of those areas that we're expanding, we're improving, and that we ensure that we have a better product at the end of the day. And business, NNP again must be credited. What we've achieved in terms of business in Grenada, support for businesses. Almost every business person is crying right now. Almost every business person is crying right now. The enabling conditions. So even when we did not give to a particular business person, they would tell you they did better under NNP. Why? Because NNP created the enabling conditions for them to succeed. So we have to ensure that we definitely work aggressively on correcting some of the things that we see happening now that is causing this slowdown in the economy and our business people complaining to the extent. But we have to inject more into supporting small businesses, and that would be a priority area. How do we ensure that people who are getting into business have the hand-holding, they have the financial support? Again, and you may find I'm repeating this because it's so wrong legally and otherwise, a minister should not be walking away with 2 million while an ordinary man who wants to start a business cannot get 10,000. So we want to provide more support for people who want to start a business and have no finance, have no collateral, have nobody to stand up with them. But we also want to support those who are already in business, improving on technology, improving on their equipment. I mean, we've done some amazing things in the past, but we want to expand on those so that the economy would take a upward, would take an upward direction, and that our people will have more monies in their pockets.
Let's get a next round of questions.
Good evening, everybody. My question has two parts, and I'm going to be very brief on it. One is going to deal with a more national perspective, and the other, I think it is going to be more geared towards the town of St. George. I'll start with the latter. The town of St. George is obviously dear to me. My family grew up here, and so I have some roots in the town of St. George. And one of the things that bothers me most about the town of St. George, especially within the last 4 years or so, is the lackluster approach to getting things done within the constituency itself. And I don't know if there's a possibility that some kind of mechanism be put in place to deal with the rapid response for the constituency, primarily because it is the gateway to our economy, it is the gateway to our country, it is what tourists see when they come in, it is where most of the people traverse in and out on a daily basis. On average, 7,000 people come through St. George on a slow day. On a slow day. We've had to deal with a traffic light on the ground for over a year and a half. We've had to deal with a building that was gutted by fire, which is still an eyesore in the city. We've had to deal with a broken road on one of the major bypasses within the town of St. George, Woolwich Road. And there's so many little things that, so many low-hanging fruits, I should say, that with proper management, you would think that these things would have been addressed almost expeditiously. What is an NNP government going to put in place to ensure that we preserve, one, the importance of understanding that people come to the city, it is a place of business, it is a major tourism attraction, and we need to be able to do something about it so that people don't turn their noses when they get into the city. That's one. And this other part of the question is, what is your NNP administration going to do as it relates to government ministers and salaries? Because our current salary system cannot be maintained if our economy is to show any sign light at the end of the tunnel. We cannot have a prime minister walking away with upwards of $400,000 when his predecessor was $100 and something thousand a year. We cannot have government ministers now working for 3 times more than their predecessors. I do not think our economy can handle it, and I want to know what is the NNP's plans for ensuring that we do something to rein this in, because if this is about service, then it should be reflected in your salary as well, not something for personal gratification. Thank you.
One more question. Next one.
Good night. I'm a little bit hoarse. I'm a little bit hoarse. Good night, everybody. What is the NNP government going to do when they get in power for the younger children that is not academic inclined, but at least have the privilege to go to secondary school and see them falter through the crack? In terms of what I'm saying, they're not able to, be in the competition with others. They're a little bit slow. And you see this train by the road end up in Form 1, maybe start school, and then finish by the road smoking weed and frustrated. What are the programs are we going to put in place for them when you get there? Thank you.
Back to the panel. I know we had that last question last week, but back to the panel.
Okay, so the question, I'll start with the last question first. I want us to be always careful when we say children are not academically inclined. I understand exactly what you're saying, but I just want us to be a little cautious or more cautious about that, because sometimes a child we described as not academically inclined could well be a child who doesn't have the necessary support, right? Especially at home. And you might be amazed what that child would do if they receive the necessary support. So I believe 2 things are critical. One, and we are going to definitely have that as one of the priority areas under education, right? We have to ensure that there's proper assessment, right? A better assessment system with people who have the technical knowledge to facilitate, to ensure that when we assess a child, we are certain, absolutely certain, of what the problem is, right? And then the second thing is that we have to ensure that we expand our support program for families, right? So families who cannot send children to school regularly, and we've had several programs, many of these programs have been reduced, I can tell you that for a fact. We have to ensure that we do even more than what we did when we were in office. We can't be talking about reducing, right? So the support that families receive to create, and I'm going to use the same term as business, the enabling condition. So if a child cannot eat, what we say about hungry belly and learning, they're going to be affected, right? If they don't have the guidance and support at home, they're going to be affected in the classroom. So the assessment and the support, we have to broaden the support we provide to parents as it relates to getting children to school. So it's not enough to give free tuition. Because if I have free tuition and don't have transportation, I don't have uniform, I don't have meals, well, what does free tuition mean to me, right? So that is extremely critical. But we have to ensure that we provide more academic programs for students who might be a little, and note my term, a little slower than others, right? So you give them that added support. And these programs must not be programs that parents are disadvantaged in that you have to pay for it. And you can't send a child to school because you don't have money, but then there's extra classes and you have to pay for it. If you can't feed them, or you send them to extra classes. So I said a few days ago, I think it was in New York, there must be a reset where all stakeholders in education come together and agree, hey, let us unite our effort on this. This is where we're going. But I just want to emphasize technical education. I feel so strongly about this. And I really hope that this administration proceed with the plans that we had as it relates to that new school that is being built in Pearls. Because this is supposed to be a pilot project. There are some students, and going back to your concern, who just are not ready at secondary school level to deal with 12 subjects. Proper assessment may tell us 5 and 2 skills, right? You have the basic and you do the technical. So all of those things, we are going to put a far better structure in place for the assessment and support, right? Salaries of ministers, let me make this point, Jason. It is absolutely wrong for a government to take 150% increase in salary within the first, 6 months? Okay, well, I'm told it wasn't even 6 months, enough. Within the first 3 months, let's say 3 months based on what you're telling me. It is wrong. How many of you took a job and within the first 3 months got an increase in salary? You have to prove yourself first. You have to perform before you can get an increase. So if you're performing well, if people are happy, people are satisfied, and the economy is growing, by all means, but you can't be taking an increase in salary when the opposite is happening. And let's always go back to the NNP track record. Brother Bowen is here. We took a cut in salary after a hurricane. We took a cut in salary after a hurricane. In this case, people went in until now, and these people are quite comfortable drawing their 150% increase. And on top of that, adding even more. So $20,000 a month for rental of an apartment for the Prime Minister. How do you do that? And at the same time, look at the situation with people. You can't have a conscience and do these things. You can't take a 150% increase in salary, then come and spend $1 million in food and drinks for Independence celebration, another $1 million in decoration for Independence celebration, while people can't send their children to school or can't feed their children. So, Jason, I think this thing boils down to conscience, and what was done, I would say, was wrong in that there was no performance. Look at what happens with the union. So you take 150% and then you tie the union to 3%, 3%, 4%. I mean, nothing to show that you've delivered, you've performed to make people feel comfortable that you deserve the size of the increase one and the length of time by which you gave yourself. And I just want to say to you that an NNP government would not be so reckless in the way that we reward our ministers in government, that when you look at increases must be tied to something. I remember, and that's the final thing I'm going to say, Brother Bowen is sitting right here. We announced in the parliament that we were going to take an increase in salary. Up till now, we never got it. It was just always not the right time. Some hurricane, something, some disaster. And we were so modest, and we were so careful with the way we managed the country's resources. Brother Bowen would tell you, except he take from his pocket, he didn't fly first class when he was traveling. And even when we traveled, we ensured that where we were going, the host of the meeting, the conference, whatever it was, that they covered the cost. We were not burdening taxpayers every time we travel. So I'm saying this thing has to be looked at holistically, but it must be from a point of conscience that after you give yourself what you give yourself, you're comfortable that you did not create a hole for the people to go down in that same hole. Okay, right, Jason, you had two questions. Now, you know what I'll sum this up as? Poor leadership, right? Where's Jason? Yeah. When we did a survey and a walk around the tongue of St. George, that's how the people described it. Poor leadership. When they look at those minor things that didn't require much to get done, that's how the people of the tongue of St. George described it. Where are the leaders in parliament and in government? And they described it as poor leadership. So tonight I'm answering based on what the people of the tongue of St. George have said.
All right, somebody on this side. Let me just get one question here.
Good evening to the head table. Ladies and gentlemen, this question is for Troy Noel. If your government were to return to office, what would be your government's first housing priority?
Two more questions. I think I saw a hand here. Hold on, I come across there. Don't worry, we're coming to everybody tonight.
Good night to the head table and good night to everyone. As Mr. Jason had mentioned, Woolridge Road, I live right under that road. When the disaster took place, I never sleep for nights because vehicle passing and I was very scared. They came about 3 times and they'll come back, I do not know. But what I really want to talk about too, there is a pending disaster high up Woolridge Road. There is a wall there, and it's leaning, and God forbid that wall fall on a vehicle. We don't know what will happen. I always say death will take place. So I'm hoping the authority will hear and go look after that wall, maybe break it down or something, because it's very, very dangerous. I passed it day before, and my friend was driving the vehicle I were in, and I said, mash next and pass, speed, girl. And she did it. I said, Lord, we passed it. But it's very, very, very serious and dangerous. Okay.
I fully agree with that comment. And there's only until some disaster happens that they'll come and, well, given what they have done in the past, they actually don't say anything, so. Next question.
Good night to the head table, and good night to everyone. Just want to ask a couple of questions and to make some comments. First of all, I must start by saying that water is life. And I've looked at the Grand Tank. As a boy, when I was growing up, I remember that you could have seen a wide expanse of water at the lake. And if you go up there now, it's a different situation. My question is, what are the plans to do something about that lake? Because to me, something has to be done, or else with the siltation that is taking place and the growth of the weeds, we won't have much of a lake again. And this is the primary source of water, one of the primary sources of water in the country. So that's one. Secondly, I'm from the West. And when I look at the road network along the western side between St. George's and Victoria, there are several areas where the road is in danger of slipping, in some places, into the sea. Now, between Guave and Bousséjou. There are areas there where if we have a slippage of the road, it's going to cripple the flow of traffic coming on the western side. And I think that it is a project that has to be revisited, sooner than later. Because if we have a major slippage of the road there, it's going to be very, very difficult for people who have to travel on the western side to use an alternative route to get to St. George's. The third thing is Granance is a developing area of the country in the west, in the south, sorry. And I've looked at the cemetery. The Granance Cemetery is almost filled at this point in time. And I'm wondering what are the plans for, identifying a new area for the burial of our dead. Next, the Granance Valley Main Road, it's a thoroughfare that handles quite a lot of traffic. And if you travel along that route, you can see that the road is slipping there in several areas. And I'm wondering if there are any plans to attend to that roadway. And last but not least, the NNP started a project in River Road. And I think all of us here would have recognized the importance of completing that project. I hope that this is going to be one of the top priority areas for completion, because it seems to me that as far as this current government is concerned, it is not seen as important to do anything about it in 4 years. So I trust that with the change of government, it will be completed. So that's my contribution. Thank you.
And before the panel goes to respond, I just want to ask everybody on the live to share. This is your conversation. While we are getting comments and questions from the audience, we also want to hear you guys on the live. We want you guys to be a part of the discussion, and we want you guys to be engaged. Over to the panel.
We have a few questions, and this is what I propose. Brother Troy can take the Tongue of St. George issues, because I'm quite sure in your going around, you would have picked up some of those issues. The Grandance one, Brother Nimrod, I would suggest Brother Bowen would take the Western Main Road issue, and I'll take Granitang. So just to say, as it relates to Granitang, this has been an area of concern, and we have to look at the Granitang from a broader perspective, preserving but developing in such a way, particularly as it relates to tourism, that that particular site becomes one of our major tourist attractions. So we have to look at models, we have to engage the technical people to maximize, optimize the benefits that we can get from this site. I believe it's a gold mine. We've started some work there before, but I believe it's a major point at which we can ensure that our economy is benefiting as it relates to tourism in a greater way. So we have to preserve. I see what's happening there, but we also have to expand on what is happening. And there's a facility in Barbados. I think the name is slipping me now. Is it Graham Park? Those of you who might be familiar. Protecting wetlands, protecting our mangrove. You know, these are projects that we have to look at. How do we work with the technical people, not just Granitang, but our mangroves and other areas in terms of preservation, but also how do we maximize them so that they work for us. Brother B?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Western Main Road project the UK CIF. Right? That's the Caribbean Infrastructure Fund. Sometimes I just refer to it as a facility, the infrastructure facility. That is the project where the Prime Minister of the UK came to Grenada and we secured grant financing to do the landslip. By that time, we had already examined the roads and we saw about 80 landslips throughout Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. And we had placed some on record, and so the UK government decided to take the Western Main Road. You see what happened at Molineux? At that point in time, I don't even think the slip was there as yet. It did not go through, did not deteriorate, but you could have shown the Prime Minister and his team what we wanted to do. The slip went, and so that was the first project. But instead of that, we had to do a lot of what we still have to do, and it should be part of the project unless they took it out. The safety of the Western Main Road. Remember when a truck went down in that particular area? That was shown to the Prime Minister of Great Britain when he came here. And all of those areas, you either relocate the road or you do a lot to ensure that you have the safety there. So that should be a part of the unfinished project unless they've removed it. I remembered when they indicated, NNP lost the money and NNP this is what. All they did is went to back, and I told them to go back to the Caribbean Development Bank because the money is executed through the Caribbean Development Bank. It's British money, but it's not being handled by Britain. And when Dr. Warren Smith, the president of the bank, came to Grenada during the tenure of the loan, that is when Britain was removing itself from the European Common Market. Remember those days? They were coming out of that trading bloc. And the Prime Minister, then the new Prime Minister, indicated that he wants to relook at all the aid packages. He drew back some from other countries. But we met with the representative, the British representative, and the Dr. Warren, and we ensured that Grenada's remain. When you look at the costs, and we got a tender, we saw we needed a bit more. And that's when the Caribbean Development Bank decided to put in the $9 million to ensure that we did the Woburn Cliff. That's what he done. It was part, it's the finance, part grant, $350 million for many countries in the Caribbean grant, and a small amount of loan from the Caribbean Development Bank. So those areas should be done, my brother, and we have to look, maybe as the opposition, we have to look and monitor. The rate that they're going, they might take 3 years to do this first one, so we could expect this other one maybe another 2 years. But we must ensure that it is on the cut and ask them the question, what has happened to the rest of the road?
As it regards to the cemetery in Grand Nance, clearly, new lands must be identified. As you stated, it's pretty much filled up now. But also, you know, after you take a look and identify new lands for cemetery, there must be some policies that, you know, we will put in place to proper manage the cemetery, right? We have to have clear outline policies, and our administration, when elected into governance, would definitely take a look with that. And since we are in the tongue of St. George, and Mr. Chair, maybe that question might come later on. We also noticed, we also know that the cemetery in the tongue of St. George is at capacity. So Brother Troy, I'm going to take the liberty and saying the same points that were pointed out for Grand Anse is the same thing that would apply to St. George. Because I know they might ask you that later on, Brother Troy. But the new National Party is definitely taking a look at that, and we will ensure that we find proper resting place as well as proper management for these plots for our loved ones.
Well, the last question belongs to me, of course, in terms of the housing priorities. Now, understand this. As a MP, my job realistically is to advocate and fight for the people, yeah? However, though, housing has been a passion of mine when I started this process. It has remained a passion of mine. And going through the community, I realized the housing stock has been dilapidated a lot, and persons need help. But I'm not the individual that's just going to say, let's do it. I think my first priority is do a proper assessment of the needs of those persons in the constituency. With those needs, then you know exactly what you are looking at now. And it gives you an opportunity to see where the priority lies, see who actually need the help initially, and who could wait for a longer time. But after the needs have been assessed and we know what we are up against, then you would remember that the NNP government had the brigade and the wardens and so on that was sent out in communities to help to build stuff and so on. We want to install, I would like that we reinstall those brigades to help persons. Because as was said earlier, I don't want a case where you give people material and they can't use it, yeah? But if the brigades are there, then you ensure that the materials are used. And what I would prefer within the first few months is that some emergency housing program is developed for the town, and programs that are timely, programs that we have clear targets now, yeah? So persons, we know where we're going and what our targets are, and hopefully we could get them done, yeah? The most important thing, however, is that ensuring that whatever we do, there is results. It's not a promise that won't be achieved. And housing, as I said, I'm very passionate about that. I came from that place where when I was growing up, we had the same issue. And who was the government that brought us to a place where we could feel like we are part of the community? It was the NNP government. I have never been able to forget this. So when I got the opportunity to do this, I took it with open arms. Housing, it's my baby.
I'll just quickly add, the problem of cemeteries and what's happening there is, I believe we can say now, is a national concern. Only today someone said to me, Ms. Pierre, when all you get back there, all you have to do something about these big hotels people building in the cemetery, and they put in veranda. And the person actually showed me a photograph of a tomb that was built. So I'm just saying, it's not just your concern, it appears to be a national concern, and we cannot close our ears to the concerns that people do have. Because space obviously is a challenge.
Next round of questions. You start with this guy in the back here.
Good night to the head table and to everyone. I'm someone that lives in the town of St. George. So the town of St. George is passionate to me. All my life, born and grown. I have run a business in the town of St. George. And the town of St. George is missing proper representation. And I could speak of several, but I'll start with one that is very important to all of us in the town of St. George, especially River Road and the surrounding areas. And that is the river project. Now, that river project, it's not a situation whereby the wall needs to be completed. I, who play sports, football, as well as I'm a panist in River Road, the pan house have been displaced because of that project. As it is now, if you go where their band is practicing, I mean, we thank the people that give them the area so that they could, play and others could learn. However, it's like an oven. It's borrowed a lot of galvanized, and that is heat. You understand? But they're doing the best. The good thing about it, they will be partaking in Panorama. Myself and Sister Jeanette would have visited them yesterday, and they sung them good. But that river project, with it not being completed, it is affecting the life and livelihood of a lot of people in River Road. And as we know, they talk about El Nino, that could be bad for this year, and that every time the rain fall, we in River Road, we heart start a beat. Because anytime that river come down, if you drive through River Road, you walk through River Road, you will see the businesses, the small businesses on the side, they will be affected. And even those concrete ones, the shops and others, they will be affected. What I want to ask, could we see that river project get priority when the NNP come into office? Make it one of the first projects, because it cannot take our next rainy season. I'm not sure if it could go through the present rainy season. Well, I know we can't, so we're praying that for God to hold back, that no flooding take place. But we need that project to be attended to. The next thing again is we have a situation whereby in River Road, the roads, our road is in a deplorable condition, and it's getting worse. It reached to the point that in the road you have, they put in steel in the road. And it's not the best thing, because the road have a lot of Baba Green. You have a lot of the asphalt on the road, and what you find happening is that with the steel is now sinking. However, where the steel sheet is, there is a drain there, and it is blocked. So the drain was not fixed. And with the block drain, with that steel sheet over it, there is a foul scent that the people, they have to deal with. And we would like a voice that could, Brother Troy, I think you don't have to wait to get in government to talk about that. We need to call on the MP, because the MP in the tongue of St. George is sleeping. He's sleeping. It's like his diabetes high. Right? So we depending on you now, right? Because we know the NNP is a party that does get things done. So you're with the right team. We need to hear your voice, calling for that to fix. The river project, the drain on the side there, and there are more, but I'll allow other persons to speak on it. Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Good night at the table. My question is, beyond building houses, how do we build? Beyond building houses, how do we build stronger communities? That's my question. Thanks.
And one more. This is going to be the final question, so.
Good night to the head table, and good night to everyone that is present tonight. Now, my question now is questions. I have two, but I'm talking about the main one that I've seen and I've felt it will cause death. Now, I went to St. George's Government School. That's on Melville Street there, right? And this building is years old. I can't even tell you the amount of years because I left school a long time. But what I'm saying is, that building there is so dangerous to people as they walk around the street on the sidewalk there. And I'm wondering if one day the whole of the building, the bricks up there, will fall on people and kill each and every one. So I'm asking, when we get into power, right? What will be the first priority to this building there? And there is another one where the fire was by Halifax Street there. John, whatever is his name, right, on the other side. There's also another one, which, I don't know, people, they sleep and they fall asleep. So it's two things, they sleep and they fall asleep. So by that now, we, the people that is alive, is in big, big trouble and danger. Now another thing, I'm talking about NIS. I've worked in the Ministry of Health for years, right? And the thing about it, work so hard and try to make everything possible for my family and other people, because I didn't work for myself. What I find that NIS is not giving people enough for the service. There's not giving people enough for the service. Remember right now, right, as people is getting elder and elder and elder and going down, right? The little bit of money they give, sometimes they give 3 something, they give 4 something, that can even buy an aspirin. Something has to be wrong, and something has to be dealt with that situation before it's too late. Because this government isn't studying people, we poor people, they're not studying us. So we have to see how we could study ourselves. If we eat block and fig, that ain't gonna help us to get rid of the diabetes or the sugar or the whatever. So we had to try to get behind them. If they run out of gas, we go push more, right? So at least this is my 2 questions, and I thank you for listening very much.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a question.
Good night to the panel, and good night to all my friends and families in the house. Now, we talk about a lot of things, but in my opinion, the people, we all people, our mindset need to change for things to change. You know, I go through some things years ago, as the young lady said, about the children who is inclined, the academic inclined or not inclined. And the kind of rigmarole I got in the ministry, even under the NNP. You understand? So I am saying tonight, we all talk about doing a lot of changes and what we need to do and what, we want to do and what we expect from everybody who in government. But when we reach there, we focus change, we shift, we focus on other things that not helping us. And I'm asking, please, since I know myself as a little girl, so they're telling me that, I know Kit Mitchell as my leader. And as I tell them, I would die at NNP. I'm born at NNP, I will die at NNP. No matter who, where, and how. But at the end of the day, we all people need to change our mentality. When that last election, as I said to one of them who trying to change me, I said to them, as long as we don't change, there would be no change. Because we need to change our mindset. Because at the end of the day, if another government come in power and we doing the same thing we do, there is no progress. No progress. We need to change. We need to change our mindset. All of us. Otherwise, we would never go forward or we would never reach where we're going. Thank you.
I will take one final question and then end it there.
Yes, good night again. Something that has been burdening me for the longest while as it concerns NAWASA. NAWASA has been cutting people indiscriminately for meager or next to nothing money. If the government could develop policies to prevent situations like that from happening, because it's really ridiculous, ma'am. You know, $20, you get your water cut, you know? That's crazy.
Back to the panel. Sorry, one panel, just bear with me. This final question. This gentleman has been waiting for quite some time to have a say.
Good night, everybody. Mr. Speaker, one thing I would like to see when we get in power, that you bring back prayers in school. I would like prayers to come back in school. All I'd like to see too, that we have domestic science in school. You know, that build some place that the children will learn to go and make cake and them kind of thing. We'd love to see that, whatever. You know, I love to see them kind of things. Thank you very much.
Okay, back to the panel now.
As it relates to the River Road project, I believe NNP has demonstrated their willingness to complete that project. It was shown in the last administration before 2022. I think if NNP would have been re-elected, that project would have been finished already. So I don't think they will be going back on this. That project will be completed because we understand the importance of it. And I don't think the citizens of River Road and surrounding area will rest if NNP decided not going to complete that project. Yeah, I remember one year when I was going to school, SGU as a matter of, and the river came down, and I went home around 6, and I couldn't go home. I had to go back in school and sleep because I couldn't cross. That's something that I think should be done, and it will be done under the next administration, which will be, of course, the NNP. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll just share this up again. So I would just respond quickly on the NIS matter. So in fairness to NIS, you would recall under our administration, there was a presentation on the financial status of the NIS and the direction that the NIS would go. What I would say to you, and you know we don't just come and promise and say what people want to hear. We are very realistic with whatever we present, which is why I want to say to you, you don't have to worry about the things we say to you. Now, what we believe needs to happen is, as a government, we need to seriously complement what people are receiving from NIS, because NIS could only go as far as they are capable of going financially. So the reality is what we face. Now we have to look at expanding our senior citizen program. So you cannot be saying to a person, you cannot benefit from seed, for example, because you get in NIS. Because the reality is, how much are you getting from NIS? So we have to look at complementing and supporting this from a government perspective. Even programs like the free medical for citizens, ensuring that it happens. Because as an NNP, we would have had a policy there, but there are some persons, when you go to the facility, the persons who are there say something totally different. So we have to ensure that those policies are implemented. But I'm going to add, because at the end of the day, your concern is, can you meet your monthly expenses? You didn't say it, but that's the bottom line. What you get from NIS, can you stretch it? And the answer to that is no. So we have to find the gap The gap being your medical bill. NNP has said we are going to ensure that the people have national health insurance. So you don't have to hurt your head about where you're going to get additional amount to be able to pay for your basic medical. The NNP has said we are going to reduce the cost of living burden for people, looking at electricity, for example, so you don't have to worry whether that little bit you get from NIS could stretch to pay your light bill, because we want to make sure we manage in that. The unnecessary tax, for example, on sugar and water and all of these things. So when you look at it, the bottom line is whatever you get as income at the end of the month, how far can that go? That's your concern. And that is why our response is that we want to ensure we provide the cushion, the additional support, so what you get can go even further than it's currently going. And that you can depend on the NNP for, our program of support for those who need that support.
Yes. Let me respond to the old buildings. Very important point. Buildings have really started to collapse in the town of St. George. We took a serious position on it, and we broke down some of those buildings, found the owners way abroad, and we had an option. We stabilize it, or we could work with you in building back something there that will be of use to the community. So these things are extremely important. There was one right on the top of the police given signal there at the end of that road, yes, right at the top there. We broke that down. That belonged to a church and something, so we did not have too many problems in dealing with that. But we had one right along the old road on Halifax Street. We had significant problems with the people there. But we went ahead and we did what we had to do, demolish to make it safe. We also had another building that we moved along on Melville Street and we worked with. So we were in the process of doing these things, and I think it should be continued. You see, it's when the calamity happens, you know, and when it falls and damages and kills one or two people, then we have a problem. So what you must do is bring it to the attention of the authority, the Ministry of Works, and that let us follow with it, because we have a procedure in place for doing those things. And if we look at the 2035 plan that we had, there are a lot of things with those buildings dilapidated and how we should deal with them. The Nawasa issue and the disconnection for very limited amount of funds, this could be something that the board could look into and work with the consumer and the ministry. As a matter of fact, you know now that they have a deposit, and whenever they disconnect you, you will have to pay that deposit, which is a sort of a customary thing in utility. But the idea of making pay for you there before you get a disconnection is something that could be looked at as a policy, and then but you have to pay, whether it's $20 or not, you have to pay, right? But they could get you to pay for the $20 instead of forcing you into a worse situation. So it's a give and take. It's customer relationships with utilities. And I think that could be looked at, and both sides, the customers and the utility, could work a solution towards this together with the ministry and ensure that the people's plight are looked at and an amicable solution worked out.
My sister asked about, well, she basically said about change. You know, I want to answer that by saying, you know, the New National Party is a party that's based on service to people. And I'm quite sure you would agree, the team that is going up for the next general election, you have no doubt that we are all committed to serving the people first. I think it's safe to say that there is no ego, and we know, you're smiling, I'm sure you're a mom yourself. We know historically, ladies and ladies that's in position of governance has very, very little ego. And I know our political leader here would have absolutely no problem ensuring that we give the best service to each and every citizen of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. And with that being said, we wouldn't be an administration that would afraid for you to and wouldn't want you to question us. So when there's an issue, I'm saying most likely there probably wouldn't be much issue, but if there is, when you're seeking the service that your tax dollar pays for, we would like for you to bring it to our attention and we will take care of it. Because we know, well, I don't want to say mommy, but we know our political leader and future first female Prime Minister of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique will ensure that we serve you. As it relates to my young brother there with the question about community, it's a very good question. Because we can have homes, we can have houses, we can have homes. But those of us that are a little more mature, I don't want to say older, knows that it takes a community to raise a child. And we need to get back to that. We believe in that because it worked. It worked. So we will ensure that, yes, the houses come, but we'll ensure that we engage all stakeholders, the schools, the churches, the elders, the sporting clubs, to be involved so that the community develops wholesome. So it's not, it wouldn't be just a roof. And while you didn't say it, I know specifically you probably were thinking more of your peers, the younger one, and you want to ensure that you grow up right and get the right upbringing. So I'm very heartened by such a young boy like you, a young man like you, asking a question like it says that you are ready. You are ready to invest in your community also. And the new National Party would not disappoint you. We will ensure that you get that service and you get that help that's needed to develop a community in a way that will be beneficial to future generations in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique.
And Mr. Chair, I'll just add one comment, and you would be surprised to know that I'm going to help you to wrap this up. So it would also include my closing comment at the same time. Something you mentioned that's so very critical, that has always been an issue, when you mention going to a particular ministry and not getting the necessary response that you expect. It's across ministries. The challenge sometimes you have when government develop policies and then people are to implement those policies. And let me say to you, one of the things we're going to be very high on, very big on, is accountability. The word service must be from the bottom up. Every person must be held accountable for the service that they must provide. But let me also make this point. There are some excellent public servants, Whether you go to the hospital, you go to the ministerial complex, there are some excellent public servants. And I feel strongly that people must be rewarded for excellence in service as well. So where there are weaknesses, we must hold people accountable. But when people perform even beyond their call of duty, they must be rewarded and recognized for their service. So that is going to be an area as it relates to public service. When we get to that, we're going to speak about how do we motivate, how do we energize, how do we get the public service motivated to serve and serve with excellence. And just to say tonight, I want to thank every single one of you who have taken the time to be out. Your questions, your feedback, I mean, it just shows your interest in national development. And I say, the team of the new National Party, we are ready to serve. We are ready to serve you. And the one thing you can be assured of, it would be better for everybody. It will be better for everybody. So thank you so very much. And I allow Chair to just close off.
A round of applause for the panel again. This was a very engaging, very informative discussion tonight. Tonight we end the People's Conversation, the second installment in the Tongue of St. George's. Like I started when I challenged the other side and members of the audience and on live, I think I want to end with a couple more challenges. Brother Bowen would have made mention that he would have had to engage property owners to either assist them or acquire their properties. That very process is what we call eminent domain or land acquisition, and it's prescribed within the law and how the process is to be followed. Now, I made a lot of noise about the length of time the Cliff Road project took. And I do not want to lay the blame on the contractor or contractors involved, but I actually want to lay the square blame on the people in charge. Because if the people in charge were responsible, were serious about the management of your taxpayers' dollars and your infrastructure and your needs, that road could have never taken more than a year. It is way too short, and it's a low-hanging fruit. It should have been achieved in lightning speed. I want to challenge the audience and the live, because they said a lot of things, and they deflected, they misdirected, they blamed other people but themselves. To research whether or not all the properties from the Woodlands roundabout to the cliff were gazetted and or acquired, which would have enabled the contractor to go in and complete his job in one stream or one flow. I also want to challenge the other side and the audience to locate and show to the nation that at some point in time, the site, and that is construction term, but the road itself, the site of the Cliff Road project was handed over and documented. That handover was documented to provide and show this country, its citizens, that that had happened. I'm pretty sure that is never going to happen. Because what this administration loves to do is run away from accountability and run away from transparency. These are two challenges that I place before them. Come forward and share the information. Come forward and tell us what are the build design contracts, what are the clauses, and what are we really in stake for? Is it that after elections, my taxes are going to go up again to accommodate and to pay those contracts? Because I haven't heard any announcements on the ceilings of what they are intended to be. For all we know, we're just seeing road and construction all over the island, but we don't know what the cost to us is going to be. Brother Boyle made another point again. Himself, and as well as political leader, himself and Dr. Mitchell would have traveled far and wide seeking what? Grants and donations to do projects. We cannot accomplish or complete anything without those. And we will fail miserably if we do not access diplomacy properly. Jumping on a plane and showing no results is not the way. An increase in airfare or expenditure with no return on investment does not assist me or you. I have yet to see the results of any travel. And unlike the political leader across the waters who could readily go in Parliament and boast that she can show her return on investment, what we get from this administration? Silence. But under the new National Party, there has never been silence. There's always been results that you can see, feel, and appreciate. That is what we need to get back to. Sisters and brothers, thank you for coming out. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And thank you for asking the questions. Have a good night. We will see you at our next People's Conversation when it will be announced.